It's not conspiracy theory when it comes to Transnistria. It's common knowledge there. So basically, Sheriff, it's not even dominant in the local parliament, so-called parliament of Transnistria. It's basically owning the parliament. All of the deputies, they are all linked to the sheriff, or they are simply members of this party.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Smirnov. You are watching or listening to an OSW interview. Today I'm talking to Kamil Tsawus, OSW's expert on Moldova and Romania. We'll be discussing Sheriff, a company based in Transnistria. Hi, Kamil.
Hi, Nick.
Today we're going to discuss a topic which for me was rather a trip into the unknown. We're going to discuss the company called Sheriff, which is based in the breakaway region of Transnistria, which broke away from Moldova. The only thing which is really well known about Sheriff is the football team, Sheriff Tiraspol, who managed to beat Real Madrid. We're not discussing football. So I went to Wikipedia. I mean, I read many of your articles as well, but I went to Wikipedia and it says Sheriff is the second largest company in Transnistria. Why should we care about the second largest company in Transnistria? And is that true?
Well, there's one good reason for that. But before we will move to this reason, I would like to probably correct Wikipedia. It's not the second largest company in Transnistria. It's actually the first largest company. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the first one which Wikipedia mentioned is the Moldova steel mill, so-called Moldova steel mill in Rybnica. So why it's like that? Well, Moldova steel mill, or MMZ, how it's called in Russian, it's probably the largest, company, like one firm or one factory working in Transnistria. But Sheriff is not. It's a holding. It's a corporation. So there are many different companies, factories, industries which are part of this holding. And if we will count all of them, and I've never really counted. There are more than 10, or actually even more than 15, probably different companies, which are part of Sheriff, then definitely Sheriff would be the largest. And Sheriff is definitely the largest taxpayer when it comes to Transnistria. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing, and this is why we will be probably talking about Sheriff today, is that Sheriff owns Transnistria, basically. Sheriff is a company, is an entity which is not only the largest economical actor, the largest actor in the economy of Transnistria, which is controlling because of that. It's controlling or influencing the economy of Transnistria. But it's also an actor which is basically running this state, quasi-state.
Now, I want some details because we hear many conspiracy theories about large corporations. Goldman Sachs would be first to my mind. Are you talking about a conspiracy theory, or do you have any way to justify the fact that Sheriff owns Transnistria?
It's not conspiracy theory when it comes to Transnistria. It's common knowledge there. So basically, Sheriff, it's like a dream, like dystopian dream taken from a cyberpunk story or cyberpunk movie or cyberpunk game, basically. So it's a corporation which do have its own political party, which do have its own government, basically, right now, because the party run by Sheriff, it's called Obnovlenie, so Renewal in English. It's not even dominant in the local parliament, so-called parliament of Transnistria. It's basically owning the parliament. All of the deputies, there are like 30, I think about 30 deputies right now. They are all linked to the Sheriff, or they are simply members of this party, which again was set up by Sheriff in 90s, basically. Then in 2000,
but does Renewal have a semblance of independence from the company?
No. Most important members of this party, most important politicians within this party are either managers of Sheriff or are people who they are usually linked to one or the other company which consists of this Sheriff holding. So yes, this is how it works. And party is one thing. Another thing is the so-called government of Transnistria, which is formed by the victorious party, like in the parliamentary republic usually. And this government is also comprised of people who are representing sheriff. And then we've got president, Mr. Krasnoselsky, Vadim Krasnoselsky, who is also linked directly to sheriff. So this is how it is in Transnistria. Since 2016, this corporation, this holding, is basically controlling local political and economic life. Of course, there's also Russian factor, and Russia is a key player still influencing situation in Transnistria. But when it comes to kind of a local politics, local laws, local economic system, it's all about sheriff.
How did we get here? How did this happen? That a company basically owns a state?
It all started in 1993, so just a year after the so-called Transnistrian War, during which, with help of Russian 14th Army, which was based in Transnistria and which is kind of still partially based in Transnistria, separatists won war with Moldova, or forces loyal to the Moldovan authorities. And then in 1993, a company called Sheriff was set up by two guys, Ilya Gushan and Viktor Kazmały. Those guys were members of militia, police forces, like militia in Russian, so police forces. And they were fighting with organized crime during their time and as a policeman in Soviet Union. And this is why they named their company Sheriff, basically. So this is how we came to name. Well, they were basically sheriffs, right? And the situation in Transnistria in 1993, in 1992, particularly during the war, was really like in the wild west, right? There were no laws. People were. There was organized crime. The people were literally killing each other on the streets from time to time. There were situations like that. Not only in Transnistria, but there was a situation in the entire post-Soviet space, particularly in Russia. This is the moment in time which is called Lichye 90 in Russian, which means like poor 90s or weak 90s. Those two guys, evil tongues would say that they used their links to organized crime, which they had because they were fighting with this organized crime, to set up first businesses or to make some good deals.
And these evil tongues, it's not just a few of them, I'm guessing.
No, it's not a few of them. Of course, we don't have any proof, but if you will speak with Transnistrians, if you will speak with some local people there, or particularly those who actually moved away from Transnistria, they would tell you that, this is what was being said. But anyway, if that's not true, they had some knowledge, they knew how this all grey market in Transnistria and the region was organized, so they could use this knowledge. And they started with some trading activities, and then very quickly they made some connection with local authorities in Transnistria, local authorities which were headed by Igor Smirnov, a politician who was the president of Transnistria since the very beginning, since 1991 till 2011, actually, so for 20 years. They had very good connection with him. They had very good connection with his son. And with this with help of this connection, they were able to influence, let's say, the local legislation in a way that was beneficial for them. So basically, they were offering some services and some support, also financial support for the authorities in Transnistria. And they were rewarded with some tax exemptions, let's say, with some regulations which were beneficial for this company. And the largest benefit they get was so-called status of special importer, which was granted to them in 1997. And thanks to that status, they basically become the monopolist. They got the right, and they were the only company that could import alcohol, tobacco, at some point I think it was also fuel, things like that, from abroad, mostly from Ukraine. And because they were able to import those things, and they were also able to sell them in Transnistria, or to sell them to some local traders, and they were earning a lot of money from in a process. They also had a right, and at some point it was exclusive right for them, to export so-called hard currency from Transnistria abroad. So Transnistria is using its own currency. It's called so-called Transnistrian ruble. And Transnistrian ruble is, of course, unrecognized. Nobody is recognizing this currency. You cannot pay it or you cannot exchange it anywhere in the world. So you need dollars, you need euro, you need, I don't know, Ukrainian hryvnias or rubles, whatever, right? Russian rubles, to buy anything outside of Transnistria. And Sheriff got the right as the only company to actually export those money outside, buy some things, and then import them to Transnistria. And this is how this whole process started. And when time was passing and they were simply buying another and another assets, they were rather not really setting up anything by themselves except a chain of supermarkets and gas stations. They were rather buying companies which were already existing and factories which are already existing in Transnistria and which were built during communist times. Then they were putting some money in it, they were modernizing it, and taking a profit out of this company. And this is how this all started, actually.
Could it be said in any way that Sheriff is having a good impact on Transnistria? Because you say, they are buying up these businesses from communist times and taking profit from them. But, you take profit when you develop an economy. Is it possible to praise the company? Would you like to praise the company?
Yeah, we can say that Sheriff, to a certain extent, stabilized the situation in Transnistria. It kind of allowed certain companies in Transnistria to actually function and even to thrive. But of course, the question is whether it's really good for the region to have one company which is monopolizing the entire economy. And if you will speak with local entrepreneurs, there are some. There are not too many of them because, well, they are being squished basically by Sheriff. They would say, no, there's nothing good in it because there's no competition. They cannot develop their own businesses. They cannot thrive. Sheriff is fighting with them not only because it's simply a huge corporation, but also because of its political influences. So if you want to destroy your competitor in Transnistria, you can simply, send tax inspectorate on this or that company. And of course they will find something, because always they will find something. If they want, and this is how it works, particularly in Transnistria. There was certain stabilization of the situation in Transnistria, of course, but still it's a monopoly, and it's not real, it's not free market economy at all. Not to mention that those companies which I've mentioned before, and let's maybe kind of remunerate them. There is this very huge factory called Tiratex, which is producing textiles. It's a really big thing. It was there already before 1991. It was built during communist times. They were making clothes and shoes and things like that. And now they belong to Sheriff, which made quite a lot of investments, and they're producing very good things. They were even producing certain clothes for militaries across Europe, and I'm talking about Western Europe. This is possible because all those companies are also registered in Chisinau. They are also registered officially in Moldova, so they can export as a Moldovan company. But Sheriff is not playing, it's not level playing field, they're not playing fair. Sheriff is using cheap labor force, which is cheaper in Transnistria than in Moldova proper. This is the first thing. And because they are monopolists, they can control wages. I mean, who will offer better wages? There are nobody else, right? So this is another reason why we cannot really say that Sheriff is a good thing for Transnistria. Plus, or for Transnistrians maybe, even better, for local population. Another thing is that a lot of companies which are run by Sheriff are able to compete on the European markets because Transnistria is getting free gas from Russia, like literally free gas. Russia is supplying this region with free gas, and we were talking about this in a previous podcast about Moldova since 90s. And this gas is being sold to companies in Transnistria, but for a very, very low price, and those money which are then generated, let's say, thanks to this transaction, are going to the budget. So basically, again, they are kind of getting back under control of Sheriff because Sheriff is controlling the budget of Transnistria. And Sheriff is using this very cheap gas, which is like 10 times cheaper than Moldova proper. If you've got very cheap gas, you can produce things cheap, right? And then there are taxes, and Sheriff is imposing basically taxes on itself, because Sheriff is running economy, Sheriff is running a country, Sheriff is creating laws, Sheriff is deciding about taxes and tax exemptions. So we know where we are, right? So it's not free market economy at all. It's not really helping Transnistria to develop this honest system in which people could compete with, or companies could compete with each other. So yeah, Sheriff brought some stabilization to the local economy, but I wouldn't say that it's good. And actually, this is one of the biggest problems. If Transnistria would at some point become de facto, or not only de jure, part of Moldova, then, well, the situation will change, and it will become, at some point, it will become normal, let's say, right? Russia would at some point stop deliveries of this free gas to...
This is not a theoretical discussion.
This is not a theoretical discussion at all. I mean, either Russia would stop those supplies of gas, or, which is more probable, Ukraine would stop transit of this gas. And Ukraine already, I mean, Kiev already officially said that they don't want to allow Gazprom to transit gas through Ukrainian territory since the beginning of 2025, or the end of 2024. So in this situation, Sheriff or Transnistria would have to buy gas already from some different sources. It's possible. Moldova can actually sell some gas which Moldova is buying from different non-Russian sources to Transnistria, but then Transnistria would have to pay like regular price. And then we'll see how Transnistrian economy and Sheriff companies would be able to function. So you see, we are not, I mean, Transnistria is not, and Transnistrian economy is not sustainable, basically, in current shape or form. And this is how it was built by Sheriff. So this is why it's not really good what happened and how this local economy was shaped by Transnistria.
Is it merely the free Russian gas which is making it sustainable, or other factors which are going to be removed?
Well, I think that a lot of those companies which are right now in Transnistria, which are operating in Transnistria, they could be sustainable. Of course, they will generate lot less profit, but I don't see reason why, let's say, Quint factory, which is a factory of alcohols and beverages in Tiraspol, which is producing very good brandy, for example, very popular, not only in the former Soviet Union, but also in the Central Europe. They could probably function still, but the Stiratex company, they would have hard time competing with Pakistan, with Turkey. And, you know, we have this problem in Europe, in European Union. There are companies like those in Turkey and Pakistan which are producing really cheap clothes because of the labor force mostly. And Tiraspol, Sheriff is able to compete with them because of gas and because of workforce. Without gas, that would be hard. There's also one more thing which actually allows Sheriff to earn decent profit, and this is the fact that Transnistria is de facto member of DCFTA. DCFTA is Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement, which is an agreement signed by Moldova with European Union. It basically allows Moldova to export a lot of things without custom duties, within certain quotas. And Transnistria is also a member of this agreement. So Transnistrian companies which are member of this holding group can actually produce very cheaply with cheap gas and cheap labor force, and then export it without custom duties to European Union, which, you know, makes it kind of an El Dorado for Sheriff company. Particularly given the fact they are, again, setting laws on the local level for themselves, setting taxes, regulations for themselves.
And theoretically, when a new reality takes place that Russian support has disappeared, Sheriff could transition towards a slightly fairer model and survive.
Well, they will be probably forced to do this. There are voices in Moldova proper, if you speak with people in Chisinau, that Sheriff is actually trying to find out some solution, that Sheriff is actually trying to reach to authorities in Chisinau and to find some way to survive, basically. At least I mean, they are aware that certain businesses will die without this free gas. But as I said, there are factories and companies within Sheriff Holdings which will be able to survive. and they are trying to retain at least some part of this profit and some part of this influence. By the way, guys who set up this company, I don't thought about this before, so Ilya Kazmaly and Viktor Gushan. I think Ilya Kazmaly is not really running company anymore. Nobody really know where he is. But Viktor Gushan, he is not in Transnistria. He lives in Germany. He even has some businesses there. So, he wants to retain part of profit from Transnistrian companies. Of course, he is aware that maybe he will be forced to give some part of power, maybe even entire power. Maybe he will be even willing to agree to de facto or de jure reunification of Transnistria and with Moldova, but with some exemptions for him, some signs of goodwill from authorities in Chisinau. Okay, guys, I will agree. We can move towards reunification, but I do hope that my companies will remain my companies, right? Or maybe somebody will buy them from me, but then I would like to have some good price, right? Those guys, well, they are politicians because they are running a region which is so-called irrecognized state, but they are mostly businessmen. They are mostly thinking about their own financial interest and probably their own security, like physical security, because that's also a problem for a lot of those people who are involved in those businesses in post-Soviet space, which arose in 90s.
Okay. Well, this has been a very interesting discussion, and perhaps we can come back to it as events develop in the region.
Yeah, events are developing in the region very fast, actually. In the end of 2023 and at the beginning of 2024, basically Moldova decided to do a thing which they never did before and which actually is hitting sheriff. So they introduced custom duties for Transnistrian companies. But before 2024, so before the 1st of January, Transnistrian companies which were, for example, importing something from abroad for themselves, they were or exporting something, they were exempt from custom duties for Moldovan budget. They could pay something for the local Transnistrian budget if Transnistrian regulations required that, but they were exempt from the custom duties of Moldovan state. Now they need to pay those custom duties. This is the first time in history. So basically, it's also kind of hitting sheriff because it's not as profitable as it used to be before to sell things or to import things. And sheriff is not happy with that. There are protests on the border. There are actually some there's some retaliation in progress. Transnistria is trying to impose some custom duties on the Moldovan farmers which are on its territory. We'll see, but I think the situation will develop. We can expect a lot of things happening in this topic in upcoming weeks.
Upcoming weeks?
Weeks,
even.
yeah.
Okay, so watch this space.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Kamil.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this discussion, you may be interested in a previous discussion we had about Transnistria or about the history of Moldova, both of which are available on screen now.